Well, we have brought to you now one of the very, very early innovators of education, our folks from Ireland. And we're very fortunate to have the director of Learnovate Centre, part of the Trinity College in Dublin, Miss Nessa McIncleave. Nessa is a wonderful lady, and please keep the hearts and the claps going, right? Nessa is one person who believes in the power of learning, and that she believes will change lives, and more importantly, she has a long and varied career in the learning technology space. Prior to joining Learnovate in March 2020, 1 week before Ireland went into full lockdown, she spent over 25 years in the various sectors, including digital, in the areas of digital content, EdTech, and one of the most recent roles that she has been in is as a COO of Touch Press, Story Toys. And some of you may be familiar with Story Toys, right? So now it gives me great pleasure to bring this lovely lady on to share with you what she thinks about AI and how that will be impacting the education sector. Nessa, over to you.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you for that lovely introduction, and welcome and good afternoon, everybody. I will just take a moment to share my screen with you. So to kick off today, I was going to tell you a little bit about myself to explain why I am here today as your keynote speaker. I'm not an expert in AI, but as Oliver mentioned, for the last 25 years, I've been working in EdTech or education technology. So I've gained a lot of knowledge and understanding about the challenges faced in implementing change in the world of learning. In my current role, I'm the Centre Director at Learnovate Centre. We are a technology research centre based in Trinity College, Dublin in Ireland. And we work with industry leaders to identify global macro trends impacting education and build research projects around addressing these challenges. I will explain a little bit more about Learnovate and the centre and the work that we do as I go through this deck. Over the next 20 minutes, I will talk to three main points: a brief overview of learning and education over the last 50 years, the impact of learning on the pandemic on learning, and discuss what we at Learnovate think the future of learning looks like and the potential role of AI in supporting its evolution. Assuming the majority of you attending here today come from an AI background rather than an education background, it may be hard to understand how slow education is to change. 100 years ago, Albert Einstein said, "Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid." Our education system has not changed significantly in the last 100 years. There are pockets of experimentation and individuals being heroic, but it is systemically the same factory-style model of educating everybody in the same way and through a narrow path, culminating in standardized tests to decide who gets into university. Our education systems are based on a model created at a point in time when repetition and memory skills were required to support the expansion of various empires across the world. Everyone is assumed to have the same brain and learn at the same pace with the same learning models. Yet no brain is the same. We are all being taught in the exact same way and expected to understand everything we are taught. It may surprise some of you here, but Ireland has been a thriving EdTech sector over the last 40 years. The evolution of technology and education started in the 1980s with computer-based learning and computer-based training, CBT. This is mostly consisted of learning being adapted for delivery on a computer without much thought for pedagogy being the science of learning or the practices on how to deliver it. In the 1990s, it moved to multimedia, beginning with CD-ROMs, and in one of my first roles in the late 1990s, we were putting school book content onto CD-ROMs for the US market. And at that point in time, we assumed the digital disruption for education was underway. How wrong we were. In the 2000s, it moved to what's called e-learning, and that is simply the delivery of electronic learning using learning management systems or LMSs. Over the last 10 years, there's been significant growth in the EdTech sector globally. And in Ireland, we have some impressive and successful EdTech companies such as Soapbox Labs, Empower the User, Learn Upon, and Adapt2Me, to name but a few. All of these are playing on a global stage and in significant growth stage. In general, technology-led evolution in education has had too little involvement with the learner and the educator as key stakeholders. The technology and AI companies that derive success within education and drive change are those that do not make this mistake and put the end user front and center of delivering a solution that works and is adaptable. At Learnovate, we are at the forefront of the EdTech community in Ireland. We are global experts in learning technology, helping our clients transform employee, student, and customer learning experiences. Learnovate provides thought leadership to the world's learning and development community on the innovative use of learning technology for maximum organisation success. Our goal at Learnovate is to ensure our research outputs are industry-led and our research outputs can be commercialised by our members. We are a government-funded research centre based in Trinity College, Dublin, with 10 years of successful industry-led research. And we empower organisations through the exploration and application of transformative technology solutions. Our research team at Learnovate has a set of unique multidisciplinary expertise. These include learning science or pedagogists, technologists, user experience experts, and we do all of this through industry engagement using innovation frameworks such as jobs to be done for engagement. By the end of 2021, we'll have further expanded this expertise to also include behavioural scientists. Our research scope for the last 10 years is categorised into 4 pillars. Accelerated digital transformation, which is active projects currently, including best practices for remote onboarding learners and employees, and helping industry to quantify the business value of learning across their organisation. Then we've 21st century skills, otherwise known as soft skills. And in this pillar, we have developed a number of solutions that support literacy and assessment of soft skill competencies, such as communication, teamwork, problem solving, and collaboration. Then we've our personalisation pillar, and in this we've developed personalised learning solutions, and we've experimented with the use of AI for automated content tagging and using machine learning to identify at-risk learners. And the final pillar, the learner in the future of work. We are researching the correlation between optimal well-being and learning, and how to engage and motivate employees and learners, and how as an organisation you can develop a culture of learning to increase your value proposition to potential recruitment candidates. Some sample AI projects that we've undertaken at Learnovate include identifying at-risk learners using machine learning, leveraging artificial intelligence for bias-free recruitment. This is an active project ongoing. Automated content tagging with machine learning. And in this, we did experiments to understand the various capabilities of existing machine learning tools for use within learning and application of them, and utilising AI to create personalised learning paths. Over 1.7 billion learners, or 90% of people attending education, were unable to attend their place of education during the pandemic. The impact of COVID and the resulting containment measures on education and training have been enormous. The majority of learning content as a result of this did not change or adapt. It was just taken as it was and delivered online. There's a general lack of understanding of the different types of learning models that work for an online environment. As a result of the overnight demand for online learning, there was no time to upskill educators, and so the learning materials delivered since the pandemic were generally not updated to reflect the new learning environment. In parallel, Employers globally have been forced to implement a remote learning model in any business where it has been possible to do so. Employers have also experienced significant cost savings when it comes to their learning and development budgets, and no longer do staff need to travel across the world to attend expensive training. And this has a double benefit of helping organisations achieve their climate change or carbon goals, as well as reducing their OPEX budgets. For these reasons, hybrid learning is very much here to stay. The World Economic Forum's Future of Job reports published in October 2020 identified there was a double disruption underway. This is the combined economic impact of the pandemic alongside the predicted increase in adoption of AI to automate repetitive tasks, thus transforming and removing jobs. As a direct result of the disruption, it predicts that 85 million jobs will be displaced. 50% of all employees will require reskilling. There will be growing demand for soft skills such as critical thinking and problem solving, and there'll be growth in continued learning. And McKinsey in February 2021 further backed this up with a statement that 100 million people expect to change occupations by 2030. It is also recognised that the future of training and work has shifted fundamentally and irrevocably. So, is education ready for AI? The very obvious answer to this is yes, but with many caveats and challenges that need to be addressed, which I will come on to in a few moments. According to the World Economic Forum, we've been transitioning to the fourth industrial revolution since 2015, and both physical labour and routine cognitive tasks are being automated. Today's workers need to continuously grow their capacity to upskill, reskill, learn, unlearn, and explore frontiers. And all of this results in a skills abyss, a term coined by Heather E. McGowan, a future of work strategist. There is and will be a continuous gap in the required and available skills, and this is not a bad thing. It moves humans up the value chain. And to address this, humans must continuously learn and adapt, and this requires investment in human potential. So what does the future of learning look like now, and what is the role of AI? There is collective agreement AI is going to play a pivotal role in realising the promise of individualised, adaptive and personalised learning paths and experiences. Many will argue this is already developed and available, but there are still quite a few challenges that have yet to be addressed to make this accessible to all learners. An obvious use of AI, which is already in development with companies such as Adaptimi, is the recognition of knowledge and using learning strategies to predict learners' future trajectories. Use of early warning systems supporting real-time interventions is really starting to take off in the United States, but they can be very narrow and lack nuance, and there's still opportunity to tackle this using AI at a broader and more nuanced level. Development of a system that could not only identify a motivated student, but also an amotivated student, and not only an amotivated student, but the type of amotivation they have, meaning, is it value, ability, effort, or task characterization? And depending on that type identified, using AI to send an appropriate message or nudge, which has been evaluated and considered, which has evaluated and considered the student's response to previous nudges. And by doing so, we can help identify students that are struggling or bored or frustrated or gaming the system and find strategies to re-engage them productively. This is a PhD research project that is currently underway by one of our researchers at Learnovate. Evaluating how we can use AI, machine learning, and the massive, amounts of data being collected to identify at-risk learners, and in doing so, identify the cause of what is putting them at risk. And there's a lot of research and potential solutions being developed, but there is still a lot of work that needs to be done to get this right. Proctoring systems, which are used to conduct formal and official online assessments, have started to use AI on top of human interventions to reduce cheating or gaming of the system and give individuals an unfair advantage. Operational efficiencies and ordering, resourcing and planning are very basic and obvious examples of how AI can be used within the education system to help educators plan. And finally, some supplemental and fun tools. Hopefully there will be lots of creativity and fun developments in AI to support learning as well. Last year, the EI funded an AI project to help recreate historical smells. Imagine a child learning about history using a VR headset and existing content to drive the story, and actually experiencing what it might be like to live in London in the 1820s using AR and VR combined with AI to create amazing learning experience. All that is stopping us here is our imagination. So what are the challenges to adopting AI in education? There are many that we face within learning, including data anonymity and different data practices around the world, but we won't discuss those today. There are only two that I wanted to mention today. The first being the challenge of inbuilt bias that might further widen the gap of inequity that we have in education. When in education, we face so many levels and types of inequality. Learner bias, where we do not consider all of the neurodiversity we have with our learners, gender bias, sexual orientation bias, socioeconomic bias, racial and ethnic bias, to name but a few. How can we develop a system that can adaptively individualize and personalize content when often systems are designed by members of a specific demographic group, which are typically higher socioeconomic status, not identified as having any additional learning support needs or special requirements, and are members of racial ethnic groups that are in the national majority? And unfortunately, they often unintentionally design learning experiences for people similar to them, and this leads to reduced education effectiveness for anyone who is not the same profile as them. How can we use AI to remove bias within AI so as to not further accentuate the existing inequality? A famous quote from Clifford Stoll: if you really want to know about the future, don't ask a technologist, a scientist, a physicist. Don't ask someone who is writing code. If you want to know what society is going to be like in 20 years, ask a kindergarten teacher. On that note, the second challenge to mention is about buy-in from the actual adopters or end users. What is core to successfully driving change is empowering and educating educators to drive AI adoption. Getting student and teacher buy-in to come on the journey of change and agree to work with the developers through the experimental stage of working this out. In general, there's a low appetite for risk within the education community, and it is important to respect the pace of education change and to understand that baby steps and demonstrable value needs to be shown in order to bring end users with you. At Learnovate, we believe that education can change lives and ultimately change the world. Imagine a world where education is equitable. It is nearly impossible to picture and possibly impossible to achieve, but AI is a change maker that can help us push as close as it might be possible to achieve. Thanks to the recent pandemic, it is widely accepted that the next wave of change in education is coming, and it requires the uptake of artificial intelligence to help shape it. If we put diversity, inclusion and humans at the centre of driving this change, there's an opportunity to do great things, impact change and leave a positive legacy of good for the next generation. Thank you all for your time. We're Learnovate Centre, Trinity College Dublin. We would love to hear from anybody interested in knowing more about us or who would like to discuss the future of education and how AI can impact it in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that insightful discussion. I certainly believe there's a huge number of opportunity where we can leverage the innovation that has been created in Learnovate and Trinity College, and this part of the world can definitely benefit from it. Wow, I still see the hearts coming. Amazing. I believe the science of learning and eventually the science of AI can come together. Maybe we should start a track that says AI Learn as a conference that we should organize. Yeah. Very good.
I think that sounds wonderful, Oliver. You can count us in for that.
Excellent, excellent. With that, we come to the end of this session, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next session.